Welcome to Inclusion at Work. I'm Nadine Vogel, your host, and I am so happy to be interviewing Scott Beth, the Global Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer from Intuit today. We are going to be talking about the amazing work that this company has done and continues to do, and their commitment to individuals with disabilities, neurodiversity, mental health, and much more. They're committed on a global scale, and I can't wait for you to hear all the amazing work that I've been hearing about for the last number of months. So with that, I'd like to introduce Scott Beth. Scott, I am so glad to be interviewing you today.
Hey Nadine, thank you so much for hosting this.
You know, you and I have worked together for many, many years, and I know firsthand how committed Intuit is, not just to issues of disability, but diversity at large. I mean, you guys really walk the talk. As you know, many companies will just check a box and make sure that they're compliant, but Intuit is truly committed at every level and in a very global way. So I'm wondering if you can just share with us what's behind that commitment and how it plays out for all of you.
We are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, Nadine. And it stems from beginning with our values. We have 5 values, and our very first value is integrity without compromise. And the first 4 words of that value is we speak the truth. And most people, when they think about integrity without compromise, think about following laws and regulations, which absolutely is imperative, but it's much more than that. It's about personal integrity and professional integrity. And if you can't speak the truth, your personal truth, then it's very hard to generate ideas and fuel innovation. The second value that we have is courage. We want people to challenge the status quo and to show up with boldness and being able to address issues that must be addressed in service to creating this incredible inclusive culture and also solving for over 60 million customers. And a third value that I want to emphasize is stronger together. We truly believe that when we can mirror our marketplace inside the company, we build that empathy and we can bring new perspectives and life experiences. But unless we invest in manager capability to draw out those voices and to create processes where everyone can contribute, diversity is a waste. And we also believe that not everyone has had the same privilege and the same experiences in our lives, which is why we lean into equity to make sure that people have the support that they need so everyone can fully participate in the innovation process. So it really begins with the values piece, building leader capability to draw out voices so that the best ideas can float to the top. And we've also have been leaning into the manager-employee relationship, especially during shelter in place and having to work in new ways, investing in our leaders to give them the capabilities and the confidence to be able to encourage all people to bring their full authentic selves to work is a major investment. But I think those are 3 things that really stand out for us at Intuit.
So Scott, I love what you said about investing in your leaders, but your leaders are working remotely just like everyone else. So what kind of capabilities are you bringing up for them so that they can support all of the work that you're talking about?
So all 9,000 of us have been working from home since March. And you're absolutely right that as we expect our leaders, our people leaders, to be checking in with our employees, and not just yes/no questions like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. We are really, tell me about your day. Tell me about your home office setup. Are you taking time out during the day for yourself or your family members? We have been heavily invested in resources for homeschooling and childcare support, but also for our employees that are dealing with feelings of isolation. I mean, we have a large number of employees that live alone, and coming to work was, a major social, thing for them. And being able to check in with each other and to support each other. We have informal polls that go on all the time in our Slack channels. How are you doing today? Red heart means, I'm doing pretty well. Blue heart means not so well. Broken heart or a black heart, it's like I want someone to reach out to me because I'm not in a good place right now. We've also been supporting our employees with extra time off that can be taken at an hour at a time, an additional 30 paid days for the year. But what we found so interesting is that people don't want the burden of work to fall on their colleagues while they take time off. So there's like this tension going on in our environment where we want to support our employees, we want to give them the time that they need, but they also want to be a great team member, which is why we've just implemented recharge days. The entire company will take the same time off around the world so that the workload stops, the messaging stops, and we can all recharge and take care of ourselves and our loved ones.
So Scott, I have to tell you, like I've said early on, I had the opportunity to work with Intuit for many, many years. But it sounds like I should be working for Intuit instead of just with the company. As you roll these kinds of programs out, I wonder what happens or how you address issues when we have folks that come to Intuit from other organizations, from other companies that perhaps don't have the same type of programming and support that you do. How do we integrate them so that they feel comfortable taking advantage of all of the things that you're offering?
So we interview and onboard and set goals aligned to our values and our code of conduct. So right from the very first interactions that someone has with Intuit, people begin to feel the culture. And then people will come to Intuit and go, is it true, everything that they've said? And that's why managers role modeling what we expect in terms of authenticity and courage and basically humanity is so critical, Nadine, because if we don't see our senior leaders walking the talk, people go, yeah, that's just a bunch of words. Instead, our CEO, Sasan Goodarzi, talks about his experience. I believe he was 9 when he immigrated from Persia, Iran, to the US during the Iranian hostage crisis, and the bullying and the harassment that he experienced. He dropped out of school. And it took mentors to bring him back into the education system, and he has thrived since. But he talks about being on the outside, and he talks about not being in a space where he felt like he could succeed. And it took a support network for him to really re-engage and to go back to school. We have something called journey lines, where we talk about one's life experiences, both the highs and the lows, and how those experiences have wired us as leaders in the organization. And it's extremely important that we have that level of candor and authenticity and truthfulness.
So Scott, when you speak about authenticity and truthfulness, obviously that's impactful for everyone. But I wonder if you could share a little bit about how this plays out for you with your employees who have children with disabilities. As you know all too well, about 15% of our employee population is caring for a child or some other dependent with a disability. The way in which these families are having to experience COVID above and beyond, what any other parent is having to experience is really tough. So I'm hoping you can share with us just what you're doing there, because from what I hear, you're really helping those employees.
Yeah, a model that we use, Nadine, when we talk about our work around DEI is head, hearts, and hands. So understand the number, understand the stress that people are under. A recent survey by Mental Health America found that I think it's 42% of employees are feeling stressed or extremely stressed. And yet it's somewhere between 55 and 60% of the respondents said their employers are doing nothing to help them with their mental well-being. So employees are super stressed. And then you start thinking about what brilliant young technologists are facing as they're coming out of school. If they have autism, the unemployment rate is between 80 and 85% for these technologists. So, I mean, just think about the challenges that they're facing. And then you start building the empathy. You talk to parents that have children with special needs working from home, and they are so afraid that they are regressing in terms of their social growth. And, and these parents are realizing the incredible support networks that they've had that they no longer have. And that's why during the pandemic, the manager-employee relationship has changed significantly, and that's where the hands come into play. How can I help you structure a work day that's going to work for you and your family and your team? How can we adopt new working hours or part-time work, or taking an hour off or a day off or a week off at a time for you to give your loved ones the support that they need? And for people that are living alone, again, making sure that they are taken care of as well.
So Scott, what I'm really hearing you say is not just the fact that you have these amazing programs for individuals across all different spectrums of disability and diversity, but you're not just doing this as a result of COVID. Right, you're doing this in a very seamlessly integrated way that sounds like that when COVID finally leaves, and someday it will, that we're going to have almost a new and improved Intuit, because you've seamlessly integrated these ideas around mental health and mental well-being that go way beyond just some of the isolation and depression and anxiety issues that people are feeling right now relative to the current pandemic. So maybe you could share a little bit about what your thoughts are going forward.
One way that I'd like to answer this, Nadine, is to begin with what employees need and want. And in talking with hundreds of employees beyond compensation, employees want three things. One, we all want to make an impact. We want to make a difference in the world. Second, we want to learn and grow. And third, we want to feel connected. And that doesn't change given the pandemic. The how we achieve those things may change, but those basic needs don't change. And you're absolutely right. What we've learned during shelter in place and the pandemic are new ways of helping employees wherever they're located in the world achieve impact, growth, and connectedness. And that won't go away. When there is a vaccine, we will continue to lean in these techniques, and it's also opening the aperture of available talent around the world. You don't have to be on a campus all the time. Personally, in the Bay Area, I have friends who commute 90 minutes each way at least, and being able to free up that time for people to spend more time with their family or more time working on a project that excites them, I think is phenomenal. In terms of mental well-being, a year ago, we made significant investments in beginning a dialogue with hundreds of employees across the company about mental wellness and building a vocabulary and learning how to navigate and talk about mental well-being in the workplace. And we had specific programs, training programs for managers, how to ask people about their mental well-being and being able to support them. Fast forward a year, and we've done a whole lot more. We're running mindfulness and meditation webinars. We had a webinar that we hosted, 300 people RSVP'd, 1,500 people showed up to learn about intentionality and stopping the inner critic and just being able to let go of things that can't be controlled, the things that are out of our control. And beyond that, we are also working with our Special Needs and Abilities Network to support parents for children with special needs. We are conducting mock interviews with early career technologists who have autism. And what's really interesting through this process, Nadine, yeah, it benefits the technologists because they're getting practice interviews. And second, we're finding outstanding talent. Third, managers are basically coming out saying, I have a child with autism. and I typically have not talked about this at work. Or I am on the spectrum. Several of our leaders have said, I am on the autism spectrum. And it is so freeing to say, I understand, this is who I am. So there are all of these beneficiaries when we create this environment of candidness and authenticity.
So Scott, I think, from what I've heard you just say, it's really about bringing your whole selves to work. And when we talk about individuals on the spectrum, it's something that I hear a lot of companies talk about today. How do we bring neurodiverse individuals into the organization? But what it sounds like to me is that Intuit is taking a longer term approach with this and doing it in a way that your process may be somewhat different and perhaps even your expectations. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more. Let's go a little deeper into what you're doing with hiring these engineers on the spectrum.
In addition to making investments inside the company, where we can build relationships with each other, whether between manager and employee, or through our communities and networks across the company, we're also taking a very explicit, conscious approach to helping our customers, because our customers have different needs and abilities as well. I once worked for a CEO who said, Scott, if something is so important, make it someone's day job. And that's what we've done with a network of accessibility champions. We have leaders in the company that are dedicated to ensuring that our products and services are accessible to people with special needs. And what's interesting too, Nadine, is as we make investments, let's say with closed captioning, not only does it help customers and employees who are deaf, but also for people that whose first language is not English. And like there's benefit that accrues to many different communities when you make these investments. In addition to having dedicated leaders for accessibility, we have a group of champions across the company, hundreds of them, that can go through a 3-tiered structure. And people get badges, and these badges are posted on our internal directory, so you know someone has been certified as being an accessibility champion. And it begins with awareness. Put your product through a series of tests to understand how it fares. Color, font size, user interface, the way that you navigate on the screen, and begin learning the technologies and the terminology around accessibility. And the next level is start applying these best practices into your product and become an advocate on your project team. And it goes all the way to get involved in your community. Be a conference speaker. Be the champion in your business unit for accessibility. And it's really, it's just so exciting to see technologists and product designers building that empathy with our customer base and then consciously changing our products so that the usability improves.
Scott, I am so excited to hear you use the term usability. Everybody talks accessibility, but you know as well as I do that we can have a website that's accessible and still not necessarily be usable by someone with a disability. So that is just music to my ears, and I would love for you to expand on that a little bit about the what's behind the usability.
You're absolutely right. Accessibility is the entrance fee, and usability to create an awesome experience where someone is delighted. Being able to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, to be able to improve that experience, to reduce data entry, to be able to provide guidance without having to ask for it. That to me is like, that is exactly where we're headed, Nadine, and what we want to be known for.
So Scott, I really hope that someone is watching this program, and I hope lots of people are watching, and that we change mindsets, right? Because if folks start really thinking in terms of usability and back into accessibility, I think we're going to see a huge amount of change and just see, like you said, people be delighted about engaging with companies and their websites and other aspects of technology. So thank you. I think that's really amazing. Just like we've been talking, when folks speak about disability, they often speak about it in terms of disability type. Whether it's autism or Down syndrome or even invisible disabilities such as mental health. But I think the way in which Intuit is approaching this is a bigger, broader way in talking about difference. And while not specifically a disability in any way, we think about folks who are extroverts like myself, or introverts, where they also work differently. They operate differently. They're still just as successful. But I believe that at Intuit, you're looking at that as well and how to integrate that in helping your employees and even your customers. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and we've had amazing authors come in and specialists around the science around extroverts and introverts. And it's really interesting, Nadine, because people want to see where they are on that continuum. Yes. And these light bulbs go off and they go, oh, that's why I don't like to go out after work, because I have to recharge, because I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And other people going, I can't wait to go out because that's the way that I build energy, is through that excitement and interaction with people, right? And people go, oh, okay, now I understand it better. The challenge that we have for our managers and where we're making investments is to be able to include everyone's voice. Doesn't mean going around the table and putting everyone on the spot. I mean, clearly, we want our leaders to be great facilitators and to be able to manage conversations, to invite people to a conversation. But leaders also need to understand what processes might be used to allow people to think about topics ahead of time, come prepared with a point of view, submit their ideas before a meeting, break out into smaller groups to have small group discussions, and then report out to the larger group ideas. I've heard at other companies extremes where managers will dominate a conversation, have a favorite person in the room, and they're talking away, leaving everyone else on the outskirts. And when you are conscious of the participation process, and you truly have a mindset which is curious, and you want to learn new things, it becomes an absolute joy to instrument these processes that allow people to contribute.
So Scott, it sounds to me like Intuit's approach is really one of recognition of difference, in that everyone operates differently in some way, everyone learns differently in some way, and that you're really helping your managers understand how to recognize the difference and then react and respond in an appropriate, an authentic way to those employees to enable them to be successful. What's really interesting to me is it doesn't seem all that different than when we are providing a reasonable accommodation or a reasonable adjustment to someone with a disability, right? It's really about providing them with a productivity tool, something that can make them successful. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, Nadine, I love that framing that you just offered, and I'm going to use it. I think that's brilliant, because most people think about accommodations as, oh, I need to have my desk moved to another place. I need to have an automatic opening door. I need restroom modifications. And it's like, no, accommodation is understanding how someone wants and can interact, and making sure that we're conscious of that, and that we do whatever we can just through our leadership and the way that we engage our people I mean, putting that under the banner of accommodation, I think is fascinating.
What this really says to me, and I may have mentioned it earlier, but it really sounds like a recognition of what it takes to deliver productivity tools to your employees, whether it's because of a disability or anything else. And it sounds to me the way in which you're approaching this is that Intuit is probably going to have the most productive workforce of any other company out there, which is terrific.
I was at a Thanksgiving dinner last year, seated next to a lady, and she said, "What do you do?" And I told her about my work in DEI and the fact that we are working on covering people who hide a part of their identity in the workplace because everyone wants to assimilate. There's some great work that was done by Yoshino and Deloitte several years ago about covering, and the research shows that 62% of all employees cover in the workplace. We leave some part of our identity out. It's much higher for LGBTQ employees, for Black and Latinx employees, veterans, but straight white men, 45% leave some part of their identity out of the workplace. And this woman next to me said, "I cover at work." I said, "How so?" She said, "I work at a biomedical firm up in San Francisco." She said, "I just had my first grandchild, a beautiful little girl, but I refuse to bring her picture or to talk about her because all of the people I work with are in their 20s and 30s, and I don't want them to know that I'm old enough to be their mother." And there's this, it's just heartbreaking. Here's this fabulous experience someone's had in their lives, and they leave it out of the workplace. And to your point, Nadine, the productivity erosion is huge when people can't bring their authentic selves to the workplace. Intersectionality is a very important term. And we use it to describe the richness of what makes us different and the same, and the fact that we are not one label, we are many different things. This is part of the business case. Yes, it's about talent and it's about fueling innovation. It's about productivity. And I have to tell you, I'm spending more of my time talking to major shareholders about what we are doing to fuel diversity, equity, and inclusion in the company, because it is directly connected to business results and reputation.
It's been a fascinating conversation. I feel like I've learned even more than I knew going into it.
I really enjoy our conversations, Nadine. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
I hope that anybody that's watching right now, if you are looking for a career change, or you're a small business owner like me and need some support, Intuit is the place to be. So Scott, thank you once again. I look forward to many more conversations in the future.
My pleasure.